I'm Ed Begley. How are we doing today? I'm trying to remain hopeful. No small feat given what we're seeing today in great detail. I certainly knew about the gyre in the Pacific, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I knew about some of the Atlantic gyres, and I knew of these things. I know of the many other environmental ills that we face. I know some of those details pretty well. But, where's the hope? And I promise you I will get to a hopeful message today. You just got to give me a few minutes. Because without hope, what are we going to do? That's one of the two great lies. And there are two that I've always been aware of. One great lie, there is no hope. Let's just watch it all unfold on the big screen TV and get a sixer and, relax, and there's nothing you can do. So why bother? That is a lie. I know, and I'll give you evidence of why that's a lie. I promise you. The other lie that is gaining popularity is that there is no problem. Back to your houses, folks, nothing to see, no problem. And that, as you know, with climate change and other things, is, that lie is gaining. A year and a half ago, there was 60-some-odd% of the U.S. population believed in climate change, human-induced climate change. Now it's 40-something, 48, I can't remember. It's not good. So Fox News is winning. Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh are winning on that front for now. A lot of people think there is no problem. Well, there are problems, and there is hope. What do we do about this problem with plastics? I'm not sure what the final solution to it all is, but I have a couple of thoughts. You've heard many of them today, much more eloquently than I could ever possibly speak to the issue. But I, for years, have been involved in boycotts because I knew Cesar Chavez. I knew the wonderful, great labor leader Cesar Chavez with the United Farm Workers, and he knew how a boycott worked. He knew that I think it was something like 4%. He couldn't get Bud Antle or Jamara grapes or Gallo, any of those people to go to the table. But at 5%, they would sit down with him and talk. It was a percentage, and I can't remember what it was, but he told me the percentage, and it varied. With lettuce, it was this, and with grapes, it was that, and he knew it. So boycotts work, and he made it work, and he did it nonviolently. But I stand here today with Ms. Malkin, who is up here, talking about a girl cot. That's the way to do it. A girl cot is the way. 85% of the purchasing power. Ladies, you have the power to do this even more than we do. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. But what do? We eliminate these plastics from our life. But the great lie, the reason to do nothing is that, and I heard it back in 1970 when I started being this green guy basically, just wanting to do something to stop the smog in L.A. in 1970, doing something to stop the pollution I saw in the Santa Monica Bay. I didn't need to read a study about it. I did read studies about it, but you could see it. You could feel it. You couldn't run from here to, out to that walkway without wheezing like this, and it was very, very bad. So I got involved in 1970, and I started doing stuff. And people thought it was pretty wacky back in 1970. You think it's wacky now, riding a bike around to an event. It was it was not at all hip to ride a bike in 1970. My bell bottoms got caught in the chain. The wind resistance from my afro slowed me down incredibly. But I stayed with it because I did all this stuff. Recycling, I know now, recycling of plastics is basically putting lipstick on a pig, It really isn't ultimately the way to go to really solve the problem, and I'll talk about that a bit. But other aluminum, what have you, has some worth in recycling of other things. All recycling has some value, but it's a distraction, it's a Band-Aid in the case of plastics, because not all of it winds up where it's supposed to be. And there's a lot of toxicity in that recycling process with a lot of these different materials. So the idea of generating mountains of trash and recycling is not good. But what I did in 1970, apropos of a boycott, I knew about Cesar Chavez and I knew that boycotts work, but I started doing all this stuff that was within my budget. And if you want to look on the internet, what I was doing in 1970 as an actor, not bloody much. The point is I didn't have a lot of money. I couldn't afford solar panels or, hybrid cars or fancy stuff. And I did all that cheap and easy stuff. And what happened next it was kind of surprising to me in a way. I saved money. I was actually saving money because I did all this stuff that I could afford. I started riding my bike, to get around even more than I already did. I always had a paper route and stuff. I always rode a bike, but I rode it even more. I took public transportation to get where I was going, and I did all that stuff and composting and all that stuff. I became a vegetarian. I ate lower on the food chain, which I had heard was better for the environment, and that was cheaper. And I even bought an electric car. I actually did buy an electric car in 1970. People think I'm making that up. Thank you. It was a tailor-done electric car. They still make electric cars today. When I say car, I'm being quite grand. We're talking about a golf cart with a windshield wiper and a horn, okay? It had a top speed of 20 miles an hour, had a range of about 20 miles, but I went around town in it. And it was not at all cool on a date, I'll tell you. I took a few dates in the electric car. When you're taking your date somewhere in an electric car that has a top speed of 20 miles an hour, and there are kids passing you on Hot Wheels, giving you the finger, it's not very, but I did it. It was cool to some people, fortunately, and I did it, and I felt good because I felt like I was doing my small part to clean up the smog. And now, even though we have 4 times the cars in LA from 1970, here comes the hope. 4 times the cars, millions more people. We have half the ozone, half the PM 2.5, half the nitrogen oxides. We have headed in the right direction. Anybody who lives here knows, used to, the San Fernando Valley, many parts of the city, it was hard to breathe nearly every day of the year. We're headed in the right direction. We can do this. That's a big ticket item. Where's the hope in other things? That ozone hole we all heard about. Some of many years ago, by 1987, people like Sherwood Rowland from UC Irvine and others, he wound up winning the Nobel Prize for his work with CFCs and ozone depletion, became clear, and people said, we're going to get rid of CFCs. They used it to clean circuit boards, they used it for all kinds of things, and they said, you won't be able to have refrigerators anymore. You crazy environmentalists, food's going to go bad, it's going to be horrible. You won't have air conditioners, people in Dallas are going to die in the heat, and you guys are going to ruin civilization and what have you. We'd heard that before, fortunately, about seat belts and other things, so we knew it might not be true. Of course, we still have refrigerators, we still have all these other devices, and they eliminated CFCs way ahead of schedule. That ozone hole is not the same size that it was in 1987. It's not bigger, it is smaller, way ahead of schedule. That's a global problem, and we did something with that. What are we going to do about this gyre in the Pacific and elsewhere? I don't know. I labored under the same delusion many people labored, like 5 years ago when I started here, but wow, they got to start skimming that stuff up. Yeah, let's clean up, the Sahara with a little hand skimmer. Forget about it. And then what else are you doing when you get that skimmer and start doing it? You're getting all the marine life and what have you. What kind of mesh net would you use to get the right amount of plastic out? You take all the marine life, all the life out of the top. You can't do it. You can't do it. What are we going to do? Well, what we're going to do is the following, because we've been like that metaphor that my friend Paul Conant talks about. We've been like that person with a leaky bathtub. We've been a person with that leaky bathtub, and the bathtub is leaking, and it's ruining the floor, the water's going all over everything. We go, well, I'll keep a little bucket there, and I'll kind of bail some of the water out of the bathtub whenever I go near the bathtub because it's leaking, and what have you, and that'll keep it from overflowing. And that doesn't work, and it starts ruining the floor. So we'll get a bigger bucket, and we'll start to really bail it out and what have you. At some point, you have to have a big wrench with teeth, and you have to shut off the spigot. That's what you need to do, to stop the single-use plastic, and we can do that. We have the power in this room to do that. And not just with our speeches and our conferences, but with our actions, to lead with our actions. We have this plastic-free event here, and it's as good as any event I've ever had, and we've had food and we've had beverages and everything, so we can do it. And we do it in our personal lives. And I'm just so grateful to Deanna Cohen and to Jackson Brown for the leadership, for getting me involved in this, because I have my issues, air quality issues, and they're worthy, and many other issues, public transportation, and I do those things. I'm glad I do. But I was a person laboring under the, we'll recycle things delusion, and in some cases it worked. I have a fence. My front and backyard fence is made out of recycled plastic. And that's good to take that stuff that's out there today and make it into something else. Post-consumer waste, let's take that. But let's stop making new stuff with that thing. Oh, it's wonderful. You can keep making new stuff out of plastic and just make a fence out of it. No, we're going to take what we got out there now. We're going to make stuff out of it that's worthy. And believe me, it's a pretty damn good fence, because the problem with plastic is it never breaks down. Now, the good thing about plastic is when I made a fence out of it, it never breaks down. And do those things for what we have today, but not make any more of this single-use plastic. And most importantly, when you hear the social justice issues, what happens to those recycled materials and the way it diminishes people's lives, we have to eliminate it for that reason too. Recycling can be very, very dirty with e-waste and other things. We must all live simply so that others can simply live. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.